What's up, guys? Do you ever feel like you leave a conversation and you just weren't heard, or maybe you were misunderstood? Or sometimes you feel like a doormat where you're always saying yes when you really want to say no? Or maybe on the other hand, in order to get your point across, you feel like you have to get really aggressive or raise your voice. What's up, guys, and welcome to the Men's Empowerment Network podcast. And this week, we are talking all about effective communication. And let me tell you, this is a topic that we could talk about ad nauseum. We could go on and on and on, but we won't. We're going to break this into two different episodes. This episode, we're going to be talking all about how to get our point across effectively and in an efficient manner. And then next episode, next week, we'll talk about that all important listening aspect of effective communication. Because as you know, there are two sides to effectively being able to communicate as gentlemen. And I don't know about you, but I have always been the very passive type of communicator. I'm more of a listener. At least for years and years and years, that's what I told myself that, ultimately my voice wasn't worthy of being heard. And so I would always take a very passive, very sheepish way of communicating. And this stemmed and this progressed up until just, a few years ago when I started learning about how to effectively communicate, get my point across in an assertive manner, and, make sure that I am understood, that I am heard, and that I have set clear boundaries. Not too long ago, I was at work and I worked directly under, a very, we'll call her a domineering woman. And, she really felt that she had to push her agenda, especially when she talked to men, in order to get her point across. And we had come into a situation as to where, some of our vendors had sent us, material that just wasn't going to work. Problem was, we didn't notice it until months after we had received it. And she comes barreling into my office. We have to get a refund from these vendors, and we have to get our money back, and blah, 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 blah. And she's just pushing and pushing and pushing. All the while, I'm like, okay, all right. I see what you're saying. You make a good point. Ha ha ha. But in my head, I'm like, no, we cannot do that because months have gone by. Anything could have happened to that material. And ultimately, it's on us now. And so I am not going to go back to our vendors 3 months, 4 months, 6 months later and ask for a refund. That hurts our relationships with them. It diminishes our credibility. Absolutely not. But did I stand up and say that? I did not. I did not, even though I was thinking it, even though it was the right way to handle the situation, I didn't because I lacked the confidence and I lacked the security of knowing that, I was in the right and standing up for myself. I didn't believe that my opinion, I didn't believe that my voice was valuable enough to actually project and make my position known. And, ultimately it didn't end well. And so there was a huge breakdown in communication. She was very pushy and aggressive, and I was very passive and sheepish. Not too long ago, a client of mine actually came to me, and he came to me with a situation that he had on his plate with a relationship. And it came down to his girlfriend wanted an old friend of hers who was a male to come and visit. And, this male was going to come and he was going to crash on her couch. They're friends. They did have, one or two dates and realized, hey, this isn't, we're just not compatible like that, but let's remain friends and think and, keep in contact. And so they did long before my client and her ever started going out. Well, when she approached my client with this, he went crazy. How dare you invite this guy over to your house? There is no way in hell he's going to sleep on your sofa over my dead body. I'll be damned if some dude is going to come and sleep on your sofa. Blah, 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 blah. And so he took a very aggressive approach to the communication. And he wondered why they had this huge fight. And so when he came and talked to me about it and he laid out the situation, I was able to take a step back from a objective perspective and lay it out there for him. And, let him know that, okay, so you come at her with this aggressive communication style. And how do you expect her to react? What is she really hearing from you? And he was flabbergasted. He's like, but, you know, I can't just have some dude come over and sleep on my girlfriend's sofa. And I'm like, okay, that is an understandable point, but how did you go about it? What tone of voice did you use? What body language did you use? And when he took a step back, he still didn't quite get it. And so I had to lay it out a little bit clearer for him. When he came at her in such an aggressive manner, she immediately went on the defensive. And she wasn't really hearing the words that he was saying. What she was hearing was, my boyfriend doesn't trust me to have a friend come over and crash on my sofa. And when I put it into that perspective, he had to lean back and kind of ponder on that for a minute. And so the aggressive tone completely miscommunicated the point that he was trying to make. And so what it comes down to is that there are basically three different types of communication, three different communication styles. And one of them, like my client projected, is an aggressive communication style. And this often comes off as very hostile. It involves expressing oneself very forcefully, very demanding, you're going to do it my way or the highway. I am the master of this house, and we're only going to do things my way because I am the man. When you come at someone like that in a very aggressive communication style, their natural instinct is either going to be to get aggressive back or to get very defensive. And that style is not effective when you want to communicate your point. And so when you are using a very aggressive style of communication, you can kind of think of it like a bulldozer. You're going to bury through every single obstacle, no matter what's in your path. And a lot of guys result to this type of communication style and wonder why there is a breakdown in communication, why their point isn't getting across, why they're not being heard, why they're not being understood. It's because the receiver of that either has two options, either, again, to get aggressive back or to be very defensive. And another communication style is the passive communication style. This was my go-to. My go-to was very passive, very sheepish, and it involves completely avoiding expressing your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions. And so this is what I lived with my entire life. Instead of believing that my thoughts, my feelings, and my emotions had value, I would just take a deep swallow, take a deep breath, and shove them way down deep in the pit of my stomach. And I would politely nod and smile. I would politely just, okay, whatever you say, you're right, I'm wrong. No matter what I say, it doesn't matter because you're being aggressive, and so you're probably right. Or your opinion matters way more than mine. So I'll just push that way down. I'll just push it way down so I don't have to vocalize it. And it's often characterized by not being able to make decisions. One who is passive is not able to assert themselves. And you can ultimately think of it as a doormat. You are being a doormat because you are allowing everyone else's emotions, everyone's thoughts, everyone else's feelings to be placed at your feet, like right on top of you, right on top of where you would put or express your thoughts and emotions. And that is how I lived for my entire life until I started learning about these different communication styles. And then you have assertive. Now, assertive communication is the one that we all should strive for. And it involves expressing yourself directly, honestly, and making sure that your needs are heard and understood. And it's often characterized by active listening, by showing empathy, being respectful, being able to negotiate and compromise. And this is like the all star of effective communication, being assertive, not aggressive, but assertive, just making sure that what you need, what you feel, and what you want is understood by others. Now, you do have a mixture of passive and aggressive, pleasantly known as passive aggressive communication. And we all know these people. Ultimately, they will manipulate, they'll use sarcasm and to try and get their point across, but they'll never ultimately come out and say it. And if I wasn't, once I got to know someone like on a more emotional level, this was the communication style I would generally go to. I'd be very sarcastic. I would kind of beat around the bush, thinking I'm making a point, but not really. And so we do have a mixture of passive aggressive communication. And so a lot of people will lean on this communication style, believing that they are making their point, but ultimately they're not. And so we really need to understand where these communication styles come from. And, as boys, we are socialized to and encouraged to be tough, to be strong, to be independent, to be competitive. And so it would stand to reason that more men or more boys would grow up to be men who have adopted this aggressive style of communication. And, a lot of guys will lean towards that style because of the way that we're socialized. You fall down on the concrete, pick yourself up, boy, brush yourself off, get to it. You want something in life, you got to go for it. You want that promotion, you better march your ass into the boss's office and demand it because you work your ass off and you deserve it. Get up and do it. And that's how boys are generally socialized. And so socialization has a lot to do with the way that we adopt and adapt communication styles. Now, I had a very different experience growing up. I was surrounded by women, and I was raised by a very manipulative, physically and emotionally and verbally abusive mother. And so, because I was socialized to be oppressed and kind of put down and demeaned and cast aside, my communication style transitioned over into passive, into believing that, my opinions, my thoughts, my emotions were not good enough in order to communicate. In addition to that, my family, we were not talkative people. We did not grow up communicating emotions. We did not grow up talking about our feelings or, our thoughts or anything like that. And so I was raised with a very passive communication style, and so how we're socialized, as men growing up as kids, depending on your household, how you were raised, will have a huge effect on the way that you communicate with others. And then culture also has a huge impact on the way that you communicate. If you go over to Britain, it's culturally expected that you are polite, that you don't communicate, your feelings very much. You are very stoic. You're very, just kind of right there. If you go to, another different type of culture, I know the Spanish culture, which I love. They're very communicative. They talk about things. They're very open. They all get together for dinners and for lunches, and every Sunday they're together and they're all talking. Everyone's talking all at once, and here and there, and everyone's talking. And many African cultures, they're very family oriented. They're very, together and communicative, and, they express themselves to each other, and, they're loud and boisterous, and so culture has a huge, huge impact on how you grow up and how you communicate your thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And, there's some science being done. There's not a lot of research, but there is some out there that suggests that biology, your genetic code, also may play a factor in your communication style. And generally, what that will boil down into is two different types of people. You've got your introverts who really get their energy from being alone and being sheltered and being in their house and not being surrounded by people. And you've got extroverts who, get all their energy from crowds and being around people and, loud, boisterous things. Me, I am a passive introvert. And so I really get my energy from, being at home, being, with myself, and maybe with a handful of friends at the most. Even when I go over to family, if it's too many people, then I start getting a little anxious. I get a little uptight. Like, this is a lot of people to deal with. This is a lot of communication going on all at once. And of course, it's progress, but I am doing a lot better than I used to. So that's certainly a good thing. Other people who are extroverted might enjoy large family functions, and hats off to you. That's just not me. And so it's really important for guys to understand the different styles of communication. There's a lot of attributes that can come and benefit your life when you learn what other people's communication styles are. When you learn about someone else's communication style, whether it be passive or passive aggressive or assertive or introverted or extroverted, whatever the case may be, you're able to form a stronger emotional connection. And when you're able to do this, you're able to more effectively solve problems and really get in tune with someone on an emotional level. And so if we go back to that story of my client, this was his girlfriend. There should be some sort of emotional connection there. And had he gone about his communication style a little bit differently, had he understood better her communication, then they would have been able to more effectively come to a resolution on the whole male friend thing coming in and sleeping on her sofa. But human motion plays a huge factor in communication because a lot of times when people speak, it's not necessarily the words that they use, but the emotional undertones that are really delivering the message. And so when you're able to, develop that sort of emotional intelligence, you're just able to communicate on a much deeper level. And in doing that, you ultimately improve your relationships. And that goes across the board. Whether it be with your partner, whether it be, a platonic relationship, even, a business relationship. When you're able, because we're all emotional beings, if you're able to, really understand what someone is saying from an emotional level, those connections, those relationships just solidify all the more. It makes them all the more stronger. And it wasn't until, I really started breaking down my barriers and starting to work on my self confidence that I was able to allow myself to vocalize my opinion, actually listen to others, and understand where they were coming from on an emotional level. And since I started that journey, the few relationships that I have really focused on have deepened to a level that, I've never experienced before in my life. And not only does that strengthen the relationship, but that also gives me a newfounded sense of confidence because I'm able to form that connection. It gives me, a greater sense of purpose and meaning and, fulfillment in life. And, so from building those relationships, in business and friendships, and even your, soon to be romantic interests, forming that emotional connection, you know, starting off slowly and then, building upon it really helps build that rapport, building the rapport that will ultimately turn into a meaningful connection that will ultimately turn into a relationship of some kind. And again, this is for romantic interest, this is for platonic interest and business. If you've ever done sales, the very first step is building rapport with someone. And that means being able to communicate with that person, not just on a verbal level, not just by hearing and understanding, but even deeper on that emotional level. Understanding other people's, communication style also helps with collaboration. If I wasn't able to connect with people on, at least some sort of emotional level at work, in the home, or in the real world, there would be no way that I could ever collaborate with someone. There'd be no way that I would be able to move forward with projects, with issues, with problem solving. Uh, if I wasn't able to at least form some sort of emotional connection with that person. And that comes from beginning to understand what their communication style is, what your communication style is, and being able to adapt to somewhere in the middle. And of course, it helps with personal growth. When you're able to learn other communication skills, then you as a man start gaining a deeper understanding, a deeper self awareness, a deeper sense of fulfillment, a deeper sense of connection to not only yourself, but to others and to the environment around you, to the universe. And, of course, it helps with conflict resolution. You know, if we weren't able to understand each other, then, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we'd all blown ourselves up by now. You know, I heard something interesting the other day that in the future, in the near future, wars will be won with words, not bombs. And I thought about that for a minute and I'm like, isn't that interesting? So ultimately, it's understanding other people's cultures, understanding other people's words, understanding other people's values, understanding other people's worth, and connecting with all of that on an emotional, personal level. And I don't know about you, but maybe you have a resentment against someone that has gone on for years. And to absolutely level with you, I have one, and it actually recently came to light. I really hadn't thought about this person, and I don't think about this person very often, but I have a unresolved resentment against this person that I had buried down deep, 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 because this stems all the way back to childhood. And this person, you know, is a family member. And so I have to see this person periodically in my life. And we have never been able to see eye to eye. We have never been able to communicate. And it's because I still have an internal conflict against this person that I haven't resolved because I haven't made the effort to understand this person's communication style. I have not made the effort to understand this person on an emotional level. I have not made the effort to take steps towards resolving this conflict. And so this is a grudge that's, you know, it it actually just kind of dawned on me a couple of weeks ago. And so I need to be proactive in order to grow personally, in order to mend that relationship and, continue my journey towards greater fulfillment, towards greater spirituality. I need to take the steps in order to understand that person. And that's going to be rough. I'm not going to lie. That's going to take a lot of uh, uh, further development on my part. But it all comes down to understanding that person's communication style, understanding that person's emotional value, and understanding my communication style and my emotional value. And so conflict resolution, it's in order to effectively achieve that, it's essential to understand different communication styles. So, how do we start this journey of, transformation? How do we start this journey of, moving towards an assertive communication style? Someone who is open, someone who is honest, someone who is direct, and who effectively communicates their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Now, if you have a tendency to lean towards the aggressive side, if you feel you have to raise your voice in order to be heard, if you have to put a lot of emphasis and a lot of passion into what you say in order to feel like, people are listening to you and that you want to assert your dominance over people, then what you may want to start doing is identifying those triggers. So when you get into a conversation with someone, could be an argument, could be a regular conversation, does your body start tensing up? Does your chest maybe start tensing up? Does your stomach start getting into knots? Do your shoulder blades just kind of get real tight at certain topics, certain subjects, certain words, certain inflections, it may be a good idea to start understanding what is going on in your body when certain conversations, certain topics, certain inflections are presented to you. Because if you're not aware of what's going on in your body, then you'll never be able to move forward and move past it. So becoming aware of what's going on in you is going to be your first step in order to move from an aggressive communication style into a more assertive communication style. And this is all going to be practice. This is all going to be, having to be aware, every single conversation, even with the conversations that you have within your head. I don't know about you, but I'm getting older and I'm noticing I'm having more and more conversations with myself. So, and they all have different communication styles. So, but understand what's going on in your body. What are those triggers that cause you to tense up, that cause you to get a little aggro? And then starting to practice empathy. Now, I've had to do this with a couple of people in my life. When they come at me with their problems, with their victim mentality, and that is a trigger for me. I'll start getting tense if someone starts whining about their life, or someone who clearly doesn't want to do anything positive, but just wants to bitch and moan all the time. That is a huge trigger for me. And so I will get tensed up. And so I've had to practice this myself in becoming more empathetic towards that person, putting myself in their position and understanding better about how I would handle that situation, how I would feel if I was in that particular situation. And so practicing empathy, just kind of taking an objective perspective of the situation, taking a step back and looking at it from an alternate point of view. That is huge in not only understanding the other person, but really opening up your mind and really opening up your soul to alternate possibilities, alternate ways of looking at things. And you will be a better person in when you go on that journey. And then start using I statements. I feel, I think, I want. A lot of times the aggressive communicator will use you statements. You. And so it feels like you're coming at someone. But when you turn it around and use I statements, not only are you more effectively communicating what you want, what you feel, and what you think, but you put yourself in a position of empowerment. You're able to direct what you think, what you feel, and what you want out there and make it very clear on what you want. Start using I statements. And if you start feeling yourself getting all tense, getting all aggro, getting all hot under the collar, time to take a step back. Time to take a 3, 4, 5 minute break. You're going to have, and this, of course, takes a lot of practice, especially if you're a real hothead, especially if you fly off the handle at a moment's notice. It takes awareness, and then it takes discipline to take a step back and say, hey, take a deep breath. And it's okay to tell the other person, I cannot talk about this right now. That's okay. Notice how you're saying an I statement, communicating your feelings, and taking the responsible, manly step back. Pretty cool. And again, it's all a process. It's all a journey. It takes practice. I didn't start developing the confidence that I have to communicate what I want, think, and feel overnight. It took a lot of practice. And, I still get into those patterns of allowing people to walk all over me. But I'm able to more quickly identify it and adjust. So, speaking of that, what if you're like me? What if you are a passive communicator? You allow people to just walk all over you. You don't feel like your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions matter at all. Well, it's going to start with coming to an understanding and recognizing your value. And that may mean digging into some past traumas. Why have you come to the belief that what you think, what you feel, and your emotions don't matter? What point in your life, or what multiple points in your life, have led up to that? And I really had to dig deep. I had to do some inner trauma work. I had to do, a lot of PTSD work and things like that in order to start to gain the confidence to understand that, I matter. I absolutely matter. The things going on inside my head, the things going inside my heart matter. And, it took a long time at step by step in order to get to that point. And then I had to start doing self advocacy. And that means asserting myself little by little, little situations. I want to go to dinner here. I want to go watch this movie. No, I don't want to go out. I want to stay in tonight. No, I don't have time to help you move your entire house. No, I'm sorry. I've got other plans. I can't do that. No, I'm not going to stay after work today again because I've done that the past 3 days. Little situations. Start building up that confidence. Start building up, that self-value. Start advocating for yourself. And then using assertive body language, standing up straight, having your shoulders back, not having your hands in your pocket, not twiddling your thumbs, or, fidgeting everywhere, speaking clearly, looking into someone's eyes when you talk, using assertive body language. And that has a lot to do with effective communication. If you're able to stand up straight, look someone in the eye, and speak directly to them, that communicates even more than the words that are coming out of your mouth. And then, if it comes down to it, and you just aren't able to dig into those past traumas, overcome that PTSD, stand up for yourself, then I would highly encourage you to start seeking outside support, either from a counselor, from a therapist, from a group therapy. There are a number of different tools in order for you to start building up that confidence. A coach who might be able to help you on that path. And I will be offering individual and group coaching here coming up shortly. So if that's something you're interested in, the point is, whether you're an assertive communicator, passive communicator, a passive aggressive communicator, in order to communicate effectively, make sure you're heard, make sure you're seen, make sure you're valued, It's time to start moving towards an assertive communication style. My friends, I really hope you got value out of this. If you did, I would appreciate, any comments down below. Share this podcast. That would help so much. Share this podcast. We are on a mission to help men improve the quality of their life. Take more joy in the life that they have, create more passion, create more purpose in their life. And a lot of that stems from communicating what you want, what you think, and how you feel. Gents, like this podcast, share this podcast. You can find this podcast also on YouTube. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. Hit me up via email. All of those links will be down below. And until next time, my friends, cheers.